She held the rope that was supposed to hang her best friend, and she let it go. Not because she forgave her, but because what she discovered next made forgiveness look like the smallest thing in the room. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button now, because the stories we tell on this channel will grip you from the first sentence to the last. Stay with me. This one will hollow you out. Ijeoma and Ngozi grew up eating from the same pot. That is not a metaphor. Their mothers were market women who set up stalls side by side in the Eke Uku market in Owerri. And while the women haggled and measured and laughed, the two girls sat on a shared mat behind the stalls and fed each other groundnuts. They were 4 years old the first time they met, and by the time they were 7, the whole market called them Nwanem Abuo, the two sisters, not because anyone confused their bloodline, but because the bond between them looked like something thicker than blood. They grew up in the same church, competed in the same school spelling contests, cried at the same films, and told each other every secret that passed through their hearts. When Ijeoma's father died during her secondary school years, and the grief turned her silent for weeks, it was Ngozi who sat on the floor beside her every evening, not speaking, just being there. That kind of loyalty does not grow overnight. It is planted slowly, watered by years of showing up. So, when Ijeoma met Chukwuebuka in a cousin's wedding in 2014, the first person she called was Ngozi. "He has a gap tooth," Ijeoma whispered into the phone, hiding behind a pillar while the man in question danced with 2 older aunties nearby. "And his agbada is very neat. Ngozi, he is very tall." Ngozi screamed into the phone so loud that Ijeoma had to hold the device away from her ear. "Go and talk to him. Go now. Why are you hiding? Ijeoma, I swear I will never forgive you if you let that man leave that compound without your number in his phone." She went. He smiled. The gap tooth was even better up close. By 2016, Ijeoma and Chukwuebuka were married in a ceremony that the whole of their street talked about for months afterward. The jollof rice was smoky and perfect. The music was loud enough to embarrass the neighbors. And Ngozi stood at the altar as chief bridesmaid in a gold asoke that made her look like a woman descended from royalty. She gave the toast. She cried real tears. She held Ijeoma's face in both hands and said, "You deserve every good thing, my sister. Every single thing." Ijeoma believed her. Why would she not? This was Ngozi. This was the girl who had sat on the floor beside her in grief. This was the woman who knew the sound of her cry, who had memorized her fears, who had been her first call and her last call for nearly 25 years. The first year of the marriage was ordinary in the best possible way. Chukwuebuka worked in logistics, Ijeoma ran a catering business from their home in Rumuokola, and Ngozi visited every other weekend, bringing wine, sometimes bringing gossip, always bringing laughter. She and Chukwuebuka got along the way that good in-laws do, warmly but with appropriate distance. He called her Auntie Ngozi as a joke, she called him Oga Ebuka in the same teasing tone, and Ijeoma would roll her eyes at both of them while secretly loving the way her 2 favorite people occupied the same space. The second year, small things began to shift. They were not the kind of shifts that announced themselves. They were quiet. A difference in the texture of an afternoon. A new carefulness in how certain words were spoken. Chukwuebuka started working later than usual, and when Ijeoma mentioned it, he said the logistics business was expanding and that extra hours were necessary. She accepted this. She was busy herself. Her catering orders had tripled, she had taken on 2 assistants, and the exhaustion of building something real left little room for suspicion. Ngozi, meanwhile, started visiting less. When Ijeoma asked why, she said she had been under pressure at her office, that her boss was difficult and her workload had doubled. This also seemed reasonable. Adults get busy. life presses in from all sides. But then came the evening that Ijeoma has never been able to explain away. She came home from a late delivery, arms aching, feet swollen, and found Chukwuebuka on the phone in their bedroom with the door almost closed, speaking in a voice so low it was nearly a whisper. She did not intend to listen. She simply paused outside the door to remove her shoes, and in that pause, she heard 3 words come out of her husband that turned her body cold. He said, "I miss you too." She stood in that corridor for a long time after the call ended. She did not confront him that night. She lay beside him in the dark and listened to him breathe, and she turned those 3 words over and over in her mind like a stone she could not put down. Over the next few weeks, she watched. She watched without letting him know she was watching. She checked nothing, no phone, no email, nothing so crude, but she observed. She noticed that he smiled differently when certain messages came in. She noticed that he had started buying a different brand of cologne without explanation. She noticed that twice in 1 month, he said he was having dinner with a colleague named Kemi, a name she had never mentioned in 3 years of marriage. She did not know who Kemi was, but she began to feel certain of what was happening. And when you suspect your husband of betrayal, the next instinct, the oldest instinct, is to reach for the person you trust most. Ijeoma reached for Ngozi. She called. Ngozi did not pick up. She called again. Voicemail. She sent a message. "I need to talk to you. Something is happening with Chukwuebuka. Please call me back." Ngozi replied 3 hours later. "So sorry, been crazy busy. Is everything okay? Can we talk tomorrow?" They did not talk tomorrow or the day after. Ngozi kept deflecting. Too busy, too tired, she would call soon. Ijeoma sat with her suspicion alone, and that loneliness was its own kind of wound. The truth did not arrive the way Ijeoma expected. It did not come through a dramatic confrontation or a careless mistake. It came through a photograph. A mutual friend named Adaura had posted pictures from a surprise birthday party she had thrown for her husband. In the background of one photo, barely visible but unmistakable, were 2 people standing very close together near a window, Chukwuebuka and Ngozi. Their posture said everything that words would have taken much longer to say. Ijeoma sat with that photograph on her phone screen for 45 minutes without moving. Then she called Ngozi. This time, Ngozi picked up on the 2nd ring. "When were you going to tell me?" Her voice was very quiet. That was the terrifying part, how quiet she was. The silence on Ngozi's end lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then, "Ijeoma, when were you going to tell me?" What followed was not a clean confession. It was fragments and gasps and the sound of someone drowning in a lie they had been holding too long. Yes, it had happened. Yes, it had been going on. Not long, Ngozi said, but long enough. She was sorry. She was so sorry. She had tried to stop it. She hated herself. She knew this was the worst thing she had ever done. She said all the things that people say when they are caught, and none of them landed as truth. Ijeoma did not scream. She did not break anything. She simply said, "Do not call me again," and she ended the call. She asked Chukwuebuka to leave the house that same night. He begged. He wept. He stood in the doorway with his eyes red and his hands shaking, and she looked at him the way you look at a stranger whose face you will never bother to memorize. And she said, "I will pack your things myself if you are not gone in an hour." He left. Now, let me pause here for just a moment, because what I am about to tell you is the part of this story that most people do not see coming, and it is the part that will make you question everything you thought you knew about karma, about justice, and about what it truly means to survive. If you have not subscribed yet, do it right now, because this story is about to take a turn that you will want to see to the end. 18 months passed. Divorce was not easy. Property, shared accounts, the slow bureaucracy of dismantling a life. But she moved through it the way strong women move through fire. She burned, but she kept walking. Her catering business became her anchor. She worked with a ferocity that bordered on obsession, expanding into corporate event catering, hiring a full team, acquiring equipment she had once only dreamed of owning. The women in her life, her mother, her cousins, a handful of true friends, rallied around her with food and prayers and the particular fierceness that Igbo women carry for each other in times of war. She did not think much about Ngozi. That chapter was closed with a lock whose key she had buried. Until the night her phone rang at 11:45, and the name that appeared on the screen was the last name she expected, Ngozi. Ijeoma stared at the name for a long time. She almost did not answer. She still does not know what made her pick up. Ijeoma. The voice on the other end was nothing like the Ngozi she remembered. This voice was cracked open. It was the voice of someone who had been weeping for a long time, the kind of weeping that goes past tears and becomes something structural, like a building with cracks running all the way to the foundation. Ijeoma, I need your help. Ijeoma said nothing. She waited. He did it to me. 3 words, but Ijeoma understood them immediately, with a completeness that required no explanation, because something in her bones had always suspected this was possible, maybe even inevitable. He did it to me, Ngozi said again. Ebuka, there's another woman. There have been others, all the time, even before you found out. I was not the first. I was not the last. He has been doing this. Ijeoma, he took money from my account. He moved in with me after your divorce, and I was so stupid. I believed. And now I am sitting in a friend's house with nothing. He cleared my savings. Her voice broke completely. What came out of her after that was not language. It was just sound. The raw, ugly sound of a woman who had finally arrived at the bottom of something. Ijeoma sat in the dark of her bedroom and held the phone to her ear and said nothing for a long time. Here is what she felt. Not triumph, not satisfaction. People who have never been truly betrayed imagine that this moment, the moment when the person who wronged you is finally suffering the same fate, feels like justice, like sweetness, like something clean. It does not feel like any of those things. What Ijeoma felt was something closer to exhaustion. A deep, ancient tiredness that pressed down on her chest like a physical weight. And underneath the tiredness, something else. Something that frightened her a little with its persistence. She felt grief, not for herself this time. She felt grief for Ngozi. Not because Ngozi deserved her sympathy. She did not. Or at least not easily, not without cost. But because Ijeoma was made the way she was made. And because somewhere beneath all the betrayal and all the silence and all the burned years, there was still the memory of a small girl on a shared mat pressing groundnuts into her hand. She did not say any of this. Not yet. Where are you? Ijeoma said. Ngozi told her. It was a friend's flat in Rumokwala, not far from where Ijeoma herself lived. The world has a cruel sense of geography. Are you safe? Ijeoma asked. Yes, he is not here. I don't even know where he went. He just left. Okay, Ijeoma said. I will call you tomorrow. She did not say it will be okay. She did not say I forgive you. She did not say any of the things that would have been easy lies. She only said what she could deliver. I will call you tomorrow. And she meant it. She lay awake for most of that night thinking about a particular kind of trap that life sets for people who have been hurt. The trap looks like this. Your pain gives you the right to close every door and call it justice. And technically, morally, by every reasonable measure, that right is real. Ijeoma had earned the right to put down the phone that night and never pick it up again when Ngozi called. No court in any land would have convicted her. But she kept thinking about what it had cost her to survive. The friends who showed up, the mother who brought soup every Sunday for 6 months, The cousin who sat with her in the lawyer's office and held her hand during the worst parts. The women who refused to let her go under. She had been saved by people who chose to show up even when they were tired, even when it cost them something. She was not going to become Ngozi's savior. She was not going to be anyone's doormat or martyr. But she was also not going to let a woman she had once loved like a sister drown in the dark without at least throwing her a rope. The next morning, she called. Then she made 3 more calls to a lawyer she trusted, to a women's support organization she had begun donating to after her own divorce, and to Ngozi's older sister, Adanya, with whom she had maintained a distant but cordial relationship through the years of silence. "Your sister needs help," Ijoma said. "I cannot be the one to provide most of it, but I wanted you to know." Adanya wept on the phone. "I knew something was wrong. She would not tell me. Thank you. God will bless you." Ijoma did not do this for God's blessing. She did not do it for absolution. She did not do it for to feel like the bigger person, which is perhaps the most self-serving reason anyone does anything for someone who has wronged them. She did it because it was the specific kind of thing that Ijoma had always done. Not because she was perfect, but because she could not look away from someone suffering and feel nothing. That was simply who she was, and betrayal had not changed her. That was what she wanted to protect. Ijoma met Ngozi once, just once, in a quiet place, a small courtyard behind a restaurant they had both known for years. Ngozi arrived looking like a woman who had survived something cataclysmic and had not yet figured out what shape she was now. Her hair was pulled back without care, her eyes were swollen from weeks of crying, and she sat across from Ijoma with her hands folded in her lap, like a schoolgirl waiting for a verdict. Ijoma looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "I am not here to forgive you today. I want you to understand that. Forgiveness is a long road, and I have not started walking it yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I will not. But I am here because you needed someone to point you toward a door, and I happen to know where one is." She slid a piece of paper across the table, the name and contact of the legal advisor, the women's support organization. She also slid a small envelope which contained an amount modest enough not to be charity, but enough to keep Ngozi stable for a few weeks while she found her footing. "This is not absolution," Ijala said. "Not for you and not for me. This is just one human being looking at another human being and refusing to do nothing." Ngozi opened her mouth, Ijoma raised one hand slightly, and Ngozi closed it again. "You do not need to thank me, and you do not need to explain. Both of those conversations are going to have to wait for another time, maybe a long time. But right now, what matters is that you stand up. Do you understand me? Whatever happened, whatever he did, whatever you did, none of it means you do not stand up. You stand up." Ngozi nodded. Her eyes were full. Ijoma finished her drink, stood up, said a quiet farewell, and walked out of that courtyard without looking back. She drove home with the windows down and the evening air moving through the car. She thought about Chukwuebuka, whose name she had heard was now in some other city, trailing the same pattern behind him, like a man who would never understand that the problem lived inside himself. She felt very little about him now. No anger, no longing, nothing that burned. Just a faint, almost academic awareness that he had existed in her life and now did not. She thought about her business, which had a catering contract with a hotel chain coming up in 3 months that was going to require all of her focus and most of her skill. She thought about her mother, who called that afternoon to ask if she was eating well. She thought about the small mat in the Ekeuku market and 2 little girls sharing groundnuts and the long distance between that moment and this one. She did not cry. She had already done that work and it had cost her enough. What she felt now was something quieter and harder to name. Not exactly happiness, not exactly peace. Something that existed in the space between those things. A kind of clarity. The clarity of a woman who knows exactly who she is, what she has survived, and what she refuses to become. She was not bitter. She had decided that, not because bitterness was beneath her, but because it was expensive and she had other things to spend her energy on. She was going to build something real with the years she had left, and she was going to build it on ground that she had cleared herself with her own hands. The next Sunday, her mother came with soup. They ate together on the veranda, listening to the evening sounds of the neighborhood. Generators, a child laughing somewhere, the distant traffic of a city that never fully slept. Her mother reached over and patted her hand, the way mothers do when words are inadequate. "You are doing well," her mother said. "I know," Ijeoma said, and she meant it completely. Some betrayals do not break you. They peel away everything false and leave you standing in what remains. What remained in Ijeoma was not what she started with. It was something leaner, more certain, more precisely hers. She had walked through a fire that her best friend and her husband had lit together, and she had come out on the other side knowing things about herself that comfort would never have taught her. She knew she could survive alone. She knew she could build alone. She knew that kindness was not the same as weakness, and that helping someone who had wronged you was not the same as forgiving them before you were ready. She knew that the version of herself she wanted to be, the version that showed up, that pointed toward doors, that refused to do nothing, was worth protecting, even when it cost her something. And she knew above all that no one, not a husband, not a best friend, not a betrayal so complete that it rewrote the story of her life, could take that from her. She had already taken it back. That is the end of this story. But if you have been sitting with this all the way through, I want you to think about one thing. The hardest form of strength is not the kind that fights back. It is the kind that decides quietly and deliberately who it will remain. Ijeoma remained herself. Through everything, she remained. If this story moved you, if it held you, if it made you feel something real, then you already know this channel is worth staying for. Subscribe now, drop a comment telling me what part of Ijeoma's story hit you the hardest, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. We will be back with another story that will leave you just as breathless, and I will see you there.